Well, welcome to another edition of Fork in the Road, brought to you by National Make Good Solutions. And who better to have on the eve of the Game 3 decider in what I think, even from a person that grew up with AFL, is the biggest rivalry in Australian sport. I don't think there's anything like it. Even the people down in Melbourne who really love their sport, and Billy, you actually do know this, that it is the biggest rivalry in world sport. But we welcome man. He represented the North Sydney Bears. He played for Australia, but more importantly, he played for Queensland. Welcome, Billy Moore.
G'day, mate. Great to have the opportunity to talk on your program, Fork in the Road. But especially on a day like today, I'm actually a little bit nervous, mate. We're obviously only about 6 or 7 hours out from kickoff in a game which is very significant for Queensland. We've lost the last two series. It's one apiece in the 2020 series. Last week we got pumped in Sydney, but really looking forward to seeing how we respond. Some key players back in the side, actually both Melburnian Storm players, Cam Munster and Christian Welch. So they're welcome back. I know Cam was there in game 2, but obviously came off only after a couple of minutes. So you can easily argue he's our best player. So as you know, mate, in the big games, you need your best players on the field playing well. So with him back in the side in game 3, it's going to give us a lot more of a chance. And obviously at home, 52,000 people. I saw a comment this morning, it'll be the largest crowd in the world since March, since obviously COVID took over the globe. So that's going to be a good thing. And you got 52,000 Queenslanders at Suncorp. She's going to be noisy, mate. Going to be noisy.
We will cover off Origin soon, Bill. But how did now reading up in your bio that you were born in? Is it technically, Bill, that am I discovering something that the man who's more Queensland than anyone was born in Tenterfield, New South Wales? Am I reading a misprint, Bill?
No, your intel is good, mate. I expect nothing from Corey except forensic insights, delving deep, peeling back the banana to find out what's below. Yeah, I was. And to all our wonderful viewers and listeners, there's a little bit of storyline behind that. Wallangarra, the little town I come from, is the most southern town in Queensland. It's only got 400 people. And it's actually a border gate town divided by the railway tracks.
Yeah.
The southern side is a little town called Jennings, 100 people. The northern side is Wallangarra, where I was born and raised. And my house is only 100 metres from the border, and it's still in the family. So that was the landscape I grew up in. But as I said, there was no hospital. So when I was about to be born, the 7th of May 1971, Mum had no option but to go to the nearest base hospital, which was in Tenterfield, New South Wales, 18 kilometres south in enemy territory. So, yes, I was born there, but she assured me I didn't take a breath until I was rushed back across the border. So I'm still clean, mate.
I know, but everyone may joke at the fact about taking a breath in the border, but was that a joke that I actually read that what'd she say? She goes, your mum assured you that you were rushed back across the border before it had time to affect your lungs.
That's right, mate. Yeah. Well, we joked about it many years later. Obviously, the way my career ended up and being the focal point off the back of the Queenslander call. In that little town, when you travel the New England Highway this year, they put in place a massive sign. It's about 20 metres long, 10 feet high. The first thing you see now when you cross the border, when you come from New South Wales into Queensland, is Queenslander. And that's in a little town. So it's a massive brand. It's got a heartbeat of itself, really. It'll be around a lot longer after Billy Moore goes the way of the daisies with his toes turned up. So, look, it is true. It's funny because I was so close to the border, it was probably so much more palpable.
Yeah.
Two little communities, the train line was the border. There was 2 pubs on either side of the border. One served 2 is new, one served 4X, and never the twain should mix. My dad drank the whole life in Queensland at the Queensland Hotel. The only time we'd venture across the train tracks is for New Year's Eve. It was a daylight saving. We'd get 2 cracks at New Year's Eve, and then we'd all then walk back across the train tracks going, that was shit house. Let's go to the Wallangarra and do it properly.
And that really does add value to you were born on the wrong side of the tracks, doesn't it? That really, is that where that saying, I think we can really use that in that situation. But when did you first realise that when you were growing up that you could actually play the game? Like where did you first sense that, I can actually make a fist of this myself?
That's a great question. I first started playing in Wallangarra as a 5-year-old. And obviously the age groups of the town that size were quite restrictive. So I actually had to play, my debut at under 5 when I was 5 was under 9s. And I played the first game and couldn't hack it. So that was the end of that season. Came back as a 6-year-old playing under 9s and had improved a little bit. But the real story there, mate, I was a player of all, master of none. I was a classic country kid, played cricket, tennis, didn't swim because there was no pools in the town. Played a bit of soccer. Obviously, there was no union or AFL in our area. But so I played everything I could get hold of, and I was good, but not good enough, not great. And for me, the turning point came as a 15-year-old. I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to go to a sports camp at Armidale University. And at that camp, there was 700 young men, 15, 16 and 17 from basically New South Wales, Queensland and the South Pacific in New Zealand. And it was the best rep players of those three age groups, Australian and New Zealand schoolboys, representative ages for Queensland and New South Wales from those age groups. I went, but I'd never played representative football, had not made it at that point in time. At the end of the camp, I was awestruck because I actually got to see perfection for the first time in my life. I actually got to see at that camp what Billy Moore had to become if he was going to be what he wanted to be. And I wanted to be a rugby league player at the highest level. I wanted to play State of Origin. I saw the first game as a 9-year-old in the Lands Room floor in Wallangarra, and I said to Mum and Dad, that's what I want to be. So 15, I had an insight. I actually saw perfection. And instead of being overawed by it, I was excited. I was encouraged. I could see they were better, but for the first time I actually was able to quantify success. I saw how much better Billy Moore had to become.
Yeah.
So on leaving the camp, everybody got a generic training program from Wayne Bennett. He was the head of the coaching council at the camp. So I got my training program. To me, it was mine. It wasn't generic. It was Billy Moore's. I've gone back to this little town and basically trained every day. Didn't make it as a 15-year-old. Didn't make it as a 16-year-old. 17, it happened. Physiologically, psychologically, from all that training, I got bigger, stronger, smarter, and faster. And that 17, I went all the way through to play representative in the national final. It was a curtain raiser to Australia versus Great Britain in 1988 at the Sydney Football Stadium. First time I'd ever been there. 34 kids played that day, and 33 were contracted. I got man of the match, and I was the only one that didn't have a contract. And that's when I realised that, wow, that year it skyrocketed from nothing to there. And I call it my Armidale moment off the back of that camp. And to me, it's what I believe is it's chasing perfection. If you want to be the best you can possibly be, it doesn't matter if it's you individually, you as a group, you as a company, you as a business. If you want to be the best, first of all, go and find out what the best looks like, and then copy it. Because whoever invented the wheel got it right the first time. So don't reinvent the wheel. Go and find out what that wheel looks like. You copy it, and then you put your own nuances and go through your filter, and you get your own little idiosyncrasies to it. But to be the best, find the best, copy it, and then improve it.
Now, speaking of perfection, you were taken by Peter Jackson took you under his wing when you first went into your first Origin camp. Now, there are a lot of people that watch this around Australia, but I suppose there are a lot that do watch it in Victoria. But just give people an insight into what happens in an Origin camp. You think it's all pretty serious. We get in a tracksuit and we'll go sit in the room. But I know you had a very unique experience with Peter Jackson, or the late Peter Jackson, and he took you under his wing.
Yeah, he came to my club, was there for 3 seasons. He got there in 1991. So I got to the Bears off the back of that contract. I signed that one, and I played reserve grade and first grade the first year, but they dropped me back. I played the reserve grade grand final. 1990, I played a full year of first grade. But then 1990 played first grade. And then 1991 was significant because we bought 3 players, and Pat Jarvis was one of them. Mario, the Maltese Falcon, Fennick was the other.
Yeah.
And then the late, great Peter Jackson. We added some really heavy artillery to our team, some smarts, some toughness. Jacko was the prince of that purchases because he was a great player. He was big, strong, fast, confident. So we were lucky enough in 1991, played in the preliminary final, just got pipped. And then we, in the 1992 season, started well, and they picked the Queensland team. And game 1, I didn't make it. Game 2, I did. We lost the first game, unfortunately, but fortunately. So I got picked, and in my debut camp, I've turned up, and my first roomie was the late, great Peter Jackson. So I've turned up, and I had him for 2 camps, 12 days, which was more than enough with Jacko. He was a fun-lived party machine. But I got the insight into what Queensland meant to him, and it was brilliant. So what you saw coming out of the tunnel in 1995, that was Peter Jackson personified. So I remember talking to him about it, and then I went to my first team meeting. He built me up about how good the camp was going to be. First team meeting, I'm sitting there, like you would have, Corey, when you first got to play in all those teams that you played in. You're going to sit with your heroes. I'm a 20-year-old kid, and I'm sitting in this room, and around me are my heroes. Wally Lewis just retired, he was talking. Mel Meninga was captain, he was talking. There was Alan Langer. There was Steve Walters, Kevin Walters, Stephen Off, all these superstars. Jacko's in the room. And I went back to room 610 of the Travel Lodge. I stayed there for my 7 years, first bedroom in the room. I'm looking down at this tracksuit that's been given. I thought about all the people that helped me be there. My mum, my brothers, all my former teammates and coaches. And I looked down at it, and I thought how powerful and significant it was for them as much as it was for me.
Yeah.
And Jacko's walked in, and he realised what headspace I was in. And I'll never forget, he goes, "Welcome to the Maroon family. Next Wednesday night, you go out and prove you belong in this family." I went, "Jacko?" I said, "Jacko, I'm pumped. Let's go train for Queensland." He goes, train for Queensland? We don't train for Queensland. I said, "What do you do?" He goes, "We go to the pub." So, to your wonderful listeners, this is a true story. He said, "Don't come home before 4 o'clock in the morning." So the first 4 days of that camp, I drank till 4 in the morning. I sobered up for 2, smashed them on the 7th, and had one of my best ever games of my life. So go figure. But yeah, Jacko was all passion. It was all Queensland. But that was the worst camp in a sense of a build-up I'd ever been involved in.
Can you ever think, Bill, like in today's day and age where we do ice baths, recovery, everything like that, hearing you tell that story again, and there was something that I did find that apparently your debut for Queensland, they've nearly, I think by some metric, they've nearly marked it the best debut of all time. So if there's a secret to success, Bill, it's going out to 4 o'clock in the morning all the time.
I did see that last year. Someone sent it through. It actually, the rating on the metrics, they give points, some sort of metric points out of 100.
Yeah.
It's regarded as the best forwards performance ever in Origin history, if you can believe that. And I think I scored 88.3 or something. And I should have got more, actually. I should have got more, another 10 points for my build-up because the lack of respect for my body and sleep. But, yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I imagine every sports science person out there would cringe at that story.
100%. Now, I've been to Origin in New South Wales, Queensland, obviously been to Origin at the MCG. One thing I feel like is a huge advantage, and I've mentioned to you this to you when we've had a beer and said, I feel like that the whole Queensland setup is a real advantage in terms of everything that goes around Queensland, like Caxton Street and the culture that's in and around Queensland. Is that something, and it was evidenced again this year when Queensland's written off once more and they come out game 1 and smack them?
Yeah, that culture is very palpable, very powerful. I remember when I made my debut and I went to my first meeting pre-getting on the bus and going to the ground. I was lucky I debuted here at Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane. I remember getting on that bus. Before we had a team meeting, and back then, so we're talking 1992, the mode of communication was fax. So if you can remember that far back in your life. And there was a pile of faxes up to the hip of the manager, the great Queenslander, Chris Choppy Close. And he was reading them out. And he goes, this one's from the Premier. This one's from Greg Norman. But he was reading a few out. He goes, but these are the important ones. This is from the kids at Charleville School. This is here from the kids up at Cape York. You could see that the faxes permeated the whole of the state. Everyone in Queensland cares. This is our moment. This is our moment for the little brother to put over big brother. When we get on the bus, this is what showed me how important that is to the psyche of the players that are about to represent Queensland. And these are the stars. Went down to the bus. I was that pumped, obviously the youngest. I was about to get on the bus, and as I was about to get on, I kept getting pushed out of the way. Mel Meninga pushed me out of the way, Alan Langer out of the way, Steve Wallace out, all these superstars. So I sort of stood back, and these blokes filed on the bus. And they all got onto the left-hand side of the bus and spread out individually to be against the glass.
Yeah.
I didn't realise why. But what that meant, when we left the hotel, we go up Roma Street, we come down Caxton Street, go past the Caxton Hotel. And they don't do it anymore because it got a bit too feral. But they would spill on the streets of Caxton Street, and they'd go berserk. Once the bus would come down, they'd toot the horn, and they would pile out of the hotels, and they would beat the windows of the glass, and they'd give these great 3 big cheers. They'd go berserk. What I was amazed at is Mel Meninga, a guy who played 32 Origins at that stage, was glued to the glass. He pushed me out of the way to make sure he was able to get the seat by the glass. And when you see someone like that who has done what he has done and now an immortal, drew that passion through the glass, that to me was amazing. So rest assured, I didn't get a window seat again.
This episode is brought to you by National Make Good Solutions, experts in taking your commercial property back to the day it was built at the end of your lease. You have touched on it a few times. For the story, for a lot of for the people who don't know, there'd be maybe some people watching that don't know the whole story behind your famous catch cry Queenslander. Now we know it's gone to another level where a few people have said it since, and it's now been immortalised in your hometown that it's got Queenslander there. But just give everyone a background of how the Queenslander chant, how that started, and of all places, it started at the mighty MCG, didn't it?
Give or take. And really what it did do is it was a call that was made when Queensland's backs were to the wall. And it happened in a game where in the first half, Queensland suffered some injuries. Mel Meninga broke his cheekbone. Bobby Lind and Alan Langer both broke their legs. And big front rower Martin Bella was knocked out, so he couldn't go back on. So we've only got 13 players at halftime. We're in front, but your 13 doesn't beat 17 in a rugby league game, especially Origin, because fatigue does get you. No matter how good you are, you will be fatigued in Origin. That's the beauty of the contest.
Yeah.
Anyway, at halftime, the Queensland godfather of Origin, Dick Tyson-Turner, got a few players, Fatty Vaughton and Gary Belcher, together and said, look, guys, we're going to need something special. We need a rallying cry. It's going to be Queenslander. You say it on the field. But what it means is the key thing. It's just a word, but it's what it means. And I was told by the late, great Peter Jackson, we pass it on year after year. What Queenslander means, and when you think about these 3 things, they're great pillars to have. It means 3 things. Help your mate, find a solution, and no excuses.
Yeah.
Brilliant things. We help your mate, find a solution, no excuses. So that was the cornerstone of the Queenslander, and it was passed down year after year. And Jacko, over those 12 days I had him for that first camp I was in 1992, he told me about the Queenslander, and that's what it meant to him. So wind the clock forward 1995. The narrative's important. The Super League war rages. So Queensland and New South Wales can't pick players from the News Corporation Super League side. Queensland, we only got 16% of the player group at best. For us, it was more devastating because that ruled out Broncos, Canberra and Canterbury. So our legitimate superstars, I've said their names already, Alan Langer, Steve Wallace, Kevin Wallace, Steve Renoff, they all can't play. So we threw in 9 rookies, which is what they've done for game 1 this year, and we've actually had more since then. It's an astronomical number of rookies we've blooded this year. We threw in 9 players. We had only 1 Australian player, Dale Sheeran. He'd been retired for a number of years. New South Wales had 12. current internationals, superstars. Andrew Johns, who's immortal, Brad Fittler, some really, really iconic players. So we're in the sheds just before we go out, and Gary Larson turns to me, and Gary's a great mate. He's got a crushed larynx, so he speaks like this. And he goes, Billy, tell him some of that Queenslander stuff, will you? And I said, no worries. So I told him what Jacko told me, what it was to be a Queenslander. 3 things: help your mate, find a solution, no excuses. Whipped into a frenzy, and all of a sudden, everybody starts screaming, Queenslander, Queenslander! And we're pumped up. They've called us to go onto the field, so we've walked out of the room, down the race, onto the field. For the first time ever, they put a camera in the tunnel, Channel 9. We didn't know it was there. Did not know it was there. Never been there before. And I always say the greatest thing in my life took place. The other 16 blokes shut up, and I've been living off it ever since. So that was the public showing. And mate, this is so true. I was going to university at the time. I actually went back to university after the camp, so 3 days later. And a couple of my graduate mates that were doing the science degree I was in, majoring in physiology, said, we saw you on the field just before the game started. And I said, what do you mean before the game started? Do they pan to the benches just before we went into the sheds? They said, no, when you're coming down the tunnel, they caught you screaming Queenslander. I didn't know. It wasn't a big thing then. But it honestly, since then, it's got a life of its own. It's now the biggest brand in Queensland. And, mate, I never wrote it. I don't own it, but I'm very happy to be the voice and public face of it.
Now, Game 3 decided tonight, Bill. What are the players going through on an occasion like tonight, and how you touched on it before, how much of a full crowd for the first time, is that a massive advantage for Queensland going into tonight's game?
Great questions. So right now that the boys would have finished lunch and they'll go into quiet time, obviously everything's a little bit different because of COVID. New South Wales are at a bit of a disadvantage because they have to fly in and land only 2 hours before a game. So normally they would have been bunkered down here for 3 or 4 days, but that's not going to happen. And that to me is quite significant in a way. We'll see how that pans out. But for Queensland being at home, I always articulate it this way, mate. When I played my first game, Game 2 of 1992, I ran out. I got a tingle thing about it. I was all but in tears. The energy that comes from the crowd. I've always said you don't run on to Lang Park wearing maroon. You actually float because the crowd carry you. And as I said, this is little brother versus big brother. They are so passionate. For your listeners who don't know, prior to 1980, you guys started State of Origin in 1977, and we took the concept in 1980 from the AFL. And the very first game was played in 1980, and we won. It was only one game that year and one game in 1981. So the first full series of Origin happened in 1982. Queensland won that. That was the first time Queensland had won an interstate series for 23 years, since 1959. So for 23 years, we rolled up and got beaten. And every time we got beaten, there was always Queenslanders in the New South Wales side because it was based on residence, not on your, I suppose, birth or where your allegiances were held. So, that fire has never died. And Queensland like nothing more than putting it over on Big Brother. So the key thing for us tonight, we can't rely on that emotion. We can't rely on that is giving us points. What it will do, though, is if we're close, come halftime, early in the second half, the crowd will go feral and it'll put wind in our sails. And that, you've experienced it, mate. Those Kangas fans go berserk. And what they do, as you know, that lifts you, that surge. And when you're on the front foot, the momentum swings your way. It doesn't take much. We're talking about small percentage, 1% here, 1% there, because it's such a competitive environment. That extra emotion that the crowd will give to the players will certainly assist.
Yeah, they certainly will. Now, we haven't got too long to go, Bill, but I'm very grateful of your time on a day like today. Lots of cashies for Bill today, I imagine, that are going on today. But just on a serious note, I know many years ago, You had a bit of a tough patch yourself. I just thought it's great for people to hear out there that you went some tough times in business and personally, and what were the things that where you turned it around yourself? Because I know a lot of people would appreciate the advice from someone like yourself.
Well, I thought the apt title of your podcast fitted it so good, mate, The Fork in the Road.
Yeah.
So for Billy Moore, I went to Sydney, and I was there for 11 years. I got a university degree, majored in physiology. Mate, I was smart with my money. I was a great networker. As you can tell, I can gibber a little bit. I my life, I'm a planned individual. I had it mapped out until I was going to be about 35. I would have played at North till probably 33. I was going to go have 2 more years in Europe or France and played rugby league and then immerse myself. I would have come back to my hometown, 1 more year in the bush for nothing, and then I was going to go back to Sydney and either go into sports science as a top-end trainer or maybe get into administration. I never hated myself enough to become a coach, so that was not going to be my pursuit. But like anything in life, things can change quickly. And at 28, my club went insolvent. I got double pneumonia, and I had a business opportunity that cropped up out of nowhere. And because my club was dissolved, I decided that I was offered contracts from 4 other clubs in Australia and England. I decided I wasn't going to take that up because I was loyal. I had a great career at North, so I didn't want to play anywhere else. So I retired and charged headlong into the business world, got involved in, I built a restaurant in Mooloolaba and bought a pub in Toowoomba. Now, to sum that up, if I had written a book of the next 2 years, do exactly the opposite to what I did, and you'd come out on top. It was an abomination. Anything that could go wrong did go wrong.
Yeah.
I don't blame anybody. Billy Moore does not make excuses. He never has, never will. No. I paid financially, emotionally for it, so I can't blame anyone else. I had some people that helped me fall off the edge of the cliff, but in the end, they disappeared. So I put my faith and confidence in the wrong people. I didn't do due diligence. And I got myself out of my depth. And ultimately, I got divorced, lost $2 million. My career in rugby league, I couldn't go back to. That stage was done. I think I spent the next 2 years nearly drunk, probably the majority of the time. And it took me 2 years to come out of the dip that I went. If you graph my life, Wallangarra through to Australia was all uphill, and then I fell off this cliff. And nearly as fast as I rose, I fell. Anyway, how did I turn it around? That's the key thing to all your listeners. And this is just a story of Billy, part therapy for me to tell it, because I'd like to think that maybe someone out there that's fallen on tough times, that they can bounce back. Because what I've done, first and foremost, is I stopped saying the word failure and I started saying the word learn.
Yeah, correct.
You've got to learn. Life's about learning. Forget about the word failure. The key thing is, what did you learn from that incident? What did you learn from that situation? So I started to learn quite quickly once I got my head around it. Secondly, you've got to stop feeling sorry for yourself. You've got to get up, get off the ground, and even if it's only baby steps, start walking forward. Create a plan. If you don't have a plan, go and ask. Because I remember my wife at the stage became my girlfriend. She became my girlfriend after the 2 years. I'd come back out of the dip. And I remember walking into a dress shop with her, and this was that an epiphany, that moment, that key turning point. The dress shop, she was looking around, and I was floating in the background as guys do, finding something else to do. I found there was this Dalai Lama type book, prophecy book on the counter. I flicked it open. At this point, Billy Moore was dragging his bottom lip. I'd become a victim. Opened the book up, and there it was, mate, written in black and white. If you're looking for a helping hand, look no further than the end of your own wrist. If you're looking for a helping hand, look no further than the end of your own wrist. I realised I was the problem. I was also the solution. What I had to do, as I said, was to get up, get mobile, get a plan, and start to work forward, talk to people, get the mentors. I stopped having mentors. All the mentors I left in Sydney. I was afraid, I was embarrassed of what happened to myself. I stopped talking. I stopped asking for advice. Ultimately, that is the thing that turned me around, was the ability to say, hey, I've got some learns here. How can I turn these mistakes into learns. And that moment was great because what I'd done is I forgot my Armadale moment. I forgot about chasing perfection. I got that bogged down in the negative that I realised, wait on, I'm 30 years old. I've got so much more to chase. I've got so many more things I can become. And I needed to get back into chasing perfection. But you have to have a plan. That's how Billy Moore turned it around. And along the way, the fork in the road, that's a key moment. I broke my jaw at 19. And I forgot this moment as well. I call it my broken jaw moment. I forgot this moment at 19 where I was in the chain sheds and they wired me up after I had the surgery a day later. I had a triple compound fracture. I was out for 14 weeks. And in that 14 weeks, the Bears won 13 games, but I wasn't playing. And I remember Pat Jarvis got involved in this. The guy I mentioned earlier on was the key signing of the Bears. He came and saw me and he said, mate, you're down, what's wrong? And I said, the guy who replaced me was going amazing. And he actually went on and played for Queensland and Australia, but he was wearing my jersey. And Pat said, what do you mean he's wearing your jersey? I said, I deserve that jersey. He said, oh, do you? He said, why does he didn't deserve it? I said, well, I deserve it because I trained hard. He said, that's your problem. He said, in life, you don't deserve anything. It's what you make and what you take is yours. I forgot that moment when I hit the bottom of the trough. I forgot my Armadale moment of chasing perfection. I forgot my broken jaw moment because in the end, you deserve nothing in life. You've got to make it and take it. As soon as you think you deserve something, you make yourself weaker. That forces you to become a victim. And in the ultimate professional world of life, doesn't matter what pursuit it is in life, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's doing podcasts, whether it's playing sport, if you want to be the best, you've got to find out what the best is, and then you've got to try and be the best every day, day after day after day. And that's the hardest thing, mate. And I'm sure you realise that when you're playing. It's hard to be great every day, but that's what you've got to be. So for Billy Moore, that 2 years is where I learnt one of those lessons, and then I actually renewed my association with the other one. The Armadale moment, the broken jaw moment, and the helping hand moment. That's how I got myself out of it. And to anyone out there that wants to know how to pick themselves up off the canvas and to start to go forward again, to create something, those three things, those three lessons were what's turned my life around.
They're wonderful lessons, Bill. Now, speaking of the best, Aguelo's Pizza for everyone out there that hasn't been there. Now, I'm not just saying this because we're great mates, but it must be incredibly satisfying to some of the awards that you guys have picked up for what you've done. It must be really satisfying to do something after that, post footy and going into that space.
Without a doubt, mate. And I mean, my finger's on the pulse. Yesterday in the restaurant serving a customer, and she had a pizza and she goes, that's the most amazing pizza I ever had. This morning I finished my swimming session. I hate swimming. I did my laps this morning, and the assistant swim coach who looks after the squads, not the old boys where I swim, she said the same thing. She goes, I had your lamb pizza last week. It's the greatest pizza I ever had. And you're so true, because what we've done is we try and chase perfection. Every time we serve a customer, we remember, as Pat Jarvis says, we don't deserve their patronage. We've got to make it and take it. We've got to make those pizzas great. We've got to make the service great. We can't forget we've got competitors out there who want their business, and we want them walking out saying, that's the greatest pizza I ever have, just like you said then. So that's great to hear, mate. But as we know, it's what you do tomorrow that counts.
It does. And hopefully tomorrow you're celebrating with the pizza, and Queensland have actually taken out the series. But look, a big thank you. We know it's an incredibly busy day for you. I know that I think you're parked out the front of Suncorp Stadium right now, ready to go and do a few cashies this afternoon. So all the best with those. And on behalf of everyone, Bill, it's awesome to sit down here. From a personal point of view, ever since we've moved up to the sunny coast, it's always been great to catch up and become great mates with yourself. So big thanks to from everyone out there. And I'll hopefully see you tomorrow, and we can have a beer and celebrate the fact that Queensland have won once again.
Couldn't leave a better thing, mate. Well, absolute pleasure for having me on the program. To all your wonderful viewers and listeners, there's a little bit of the Billy Moore story. And, mate, it's been a pleasure to meet you, mate, especially from someone across the different divide, from the AFL world. It's been a great experience. So go the Queenslanders, and we'll see you tomorrow for a beer and a pizza.
Thanks, mate.